Hi, I'm Jeff Miller.
And I'm Anthony Navarro, and welcome to Talk Out Loud, where LGBTQIA plus people proudly share their stories. On this episode of Talk Out Loud, we're joined by the talented Michael D. Cohen from Nickelodeon's hit sitcoms Henry Danger and Danger Force, where he plays the genius Schwoz Schwartz. Michael shares how a degree in molecular biology gave him a different understanding of how everything works while pursuing his dreams at all costs. All the while, he was fully living authentically to get there. Let's hear Michael's story.
Hello, everyone. We are so excited to have with us Michael D. Cohen. You might know Michael from Nickelodeon's hit sitcoms Henry Danger and Danger Force, playing Schwoz. And also, Michael's done just some amazing work with SAG-AFTRA, the Hollywood Conservatory, American Film Institute, faculty lecturer for University of Texas, Austin, and Hollywood. I want to say, Michael, I am so excited for you to be here with us, and thank you for joining us today.
I'm super excited to be here. What's your name again?
So I'll be playing the role of Jeff today, and my lovely sidekick will be here.
And
I'm
you
over
are,
here.
Yeah, right.
I always appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. I'm super stoked to be here.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. Michael, so, LA is home for you now, I gather. Where are you from originally?
Well, I'm Canadian. I was, Winnipeg, Vancouver, and Toronto, basically. Like kind of center, west, east.
Yeah, that's pretty everything but the East Coast there for Canada, pretty much, right? So
Yeah. I mean, I lived in all those areas for a number of years. So
where was school for you at for college?
Vancouver, UBC, University of British Columbia, and then I did my master's in Toronto at U of T.
Just to give everyone a little background, you did a bachelor's of science, right?
Yeah, I did what most actors do. I got a degree in molecular biology, and it's a common background for us to understand these things. You kind of need it to analyze scripts, right? I mean, that's why I did it. No, I was, I started off as a theater major at UBC, and after the first year, I switched into cell biology, and this was before there was a lot of online stuff for registration, and I had to go to the registrar's office, and she looked at me like, wait, what? You're going from theater to science? Wait, like she'd never seen that before. But I did. I really loved biology, and I loved studying the human body, and I'm very interested in the mind-body connection. And it actually is very relevant to acting, believe it or not. Yeah. So I find that I'm so grateful that I had that education. And to have a science education is really amazing. It really gives you a different perspective on the world, different understanding of how things work. And so I'm really grateful I did it.
There was definitely someone in your life at a young age that kind of instilled, a desire or an interest in acting. Can we talk about her a little bit?
Carol Burnett. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a crazy fan of hers. Everybody, I mean, look, I've never met anybody who's said, Carol Burnett. I mean, everybody loves her, right? Loves her. And even young kids today that get to see her work just fall in love with it. It's kind of timeless, even though a lot of the sketches are kind of dated, but the comedy is timeless. And I just studied her, and I studied the whole ensemble, and it became part of my viscera, the comedic viscera. Was their timing, their sensibility. It just spoke to me. It felt like there was no barrier between me and that television. It was just this connection. And she describes having that connection in her book. She describes it having that with Jimmy Stewart. So I met her once, and I said, "You're my Jimmy Stewart," and she understood what that meant. It was kind of it was nice to be able to communicate that. I early on was very influenced by her, and I was like 4 years old watching her show.
Wow. And it's interesting. I grew up in the 80s, and I remember her shows being replayed, and there was something, even like walking, maybe it was my grandparents' house or something like that. It really doesn't matter. But I remember walking into the room and realizing, even as a kid, looking up and being like, there's something different happening here with this show that caught my attention.
Yeah.
Like that what you're talking about right there. Yeah. And just observing someone in their craft or in their gift or whatever you choose to call it, just that flow. I'm just curious. So, that you had that realization, that the connection there. Why did you switch majors then? I'm just curious. What was there?
I've never really understood it, to be honest. I think there was a number of factors. I think academically, I couldn't really justify to myself to get a theater degree at that time. Not that there's anything wrong with a theater degree. I mean, I've taught at a theater schooling, university, theater school is very useful. But I for myself, somehow it just didn't fit at the time. And my father had passed away that first year too. And I think that what was required of me to give to a program like that, I just didn't have. I think I probably wanted to get a little more heady. So that might have been part of it. I mean, I was young, you're 18, 19 years old. So I didn't really know how to cope with those kinds of, challenges. But I think it was just a bunch of different things. And I think I also was genuinely passionate about biology. I also kind of wonder because most people who know my story, they know that I transitioned like 20 years ago. And of course, when I was in college, that was pre-transition. And I wasn't really aware of what was going on. In those days, we didn't have anybody in the media that could reflect what we are. Like it was this non-existent concept. So I think that I kind of wonder if my passion for biology was somehow like, if I could just understand my body, maybe I can control it. Like maybe there's some way in that, maybe I'll find the secret of what the hell's going on with me, Yeah. I wonder subconsciously if that was kind of an aspect of it. But bottom line is I was also really passionate about what I was learning. I loved it. And, when I described what I loved so much about it, they were like, oh, okay, we are like an artsy in science. I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's like, there's storytelling. Like, if you look at biochemistry and you look at, like, people are much more aware of this stuff now because of COVID and how the body works and what a vaccine means and what immunity means to some extent, but the story of the molecules in our body, it's like a soap opera. There's like resistance and then there's fighting and then there's people like the entities taking over and then there's receptors that let the gate open or gate close and things are getting kicked out of places. I mean, it's literally like days of our lives. So, there's storytelling in biochemistry that I found really cool.
So you went through this whole process of, switching and studying biology, but we all know that you eventually found acting. How did you transition back into the craft?
Well, I always knew that's what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to be an actor. So when I finished, we call it university. In Canada, we don't say college. College in Canada means those 2-year colleges, those community colleges.
The starters.
Right? Yeah, that's what college means. And university means an academic degree. Anyway, when I finished that, I was pretty confused for a while, but then I realized, no, I really want to pursue it. And I started working behind the scenes in production. I worked as a PA, as an AD, as a researcher, all those kinds of things. And then got more into voice acting. And I think it was because, I just didn't feel comfortable in my body yet to really go after acting in live action form. So I did everything around it.
Michael, I'm just curious, like, when got like these coming of age years and for everyone it's different. And, did you have a spiritual practice that was innate, that it was taught to you, from your family that you used, or was there anything you gathered from other people that was just like, whether it was nature or science that kind of was your, I don't know, that's something that you kind of like looked into or used as kind of like almost like as a roadmap for dealing with some things in life at all?
When I was young, no, but when I got older, for sure. Yeah. But as a kid, no. I mean, I was raised Jewish, but that wasn't spiritual to me at the time. Okay. It was kind of, it was difficult. It was more didactic and oppressive. It wasn't something that I found resources in. I was, I was part of this youth group that was like a Jewish youth group, and that gave me that fed me a lot. I got to do a lot of theater with that. So that was really amazing. But no, I think, for me, spirituality really evolved as I got older, as I became an young adult, and then moved on. And, I started meditating and doing things like that connected me. And nature is super important to me. Yeah. I'm big into nature and camping and mountaineering and things like that. So that to me is very much my temple. Yeah.
Well, and that's really beautiful. So just to give some people a little bit of background. So you were born in Winnipeg, which is a smaller town, right? As far as,
well, I mean, I guess so. I don't know. It's a city, definitely a city. I don't know how big it is.
So I guess where I'm trying to understand, not being in Winnipeg, but like having a better idea for Vancouver being more of a, a larger
Vancouver's
coast,
more, yeah.
Right. Coast city. So Was it easy for you in all three of the cities that you lived in, Toronto, Winnipeg, and in Vancouver, to have that reprieve to go into nature? Did you have to carve out time for that? Or was it just naturally something that just occurred throughout the day or in your life?
Well, in Vancouver, like I went to summer camp every year, and that was
okay.
that was big. We went on backpacking trips and things like that, and we were right by the ocean, and it was just stunning. Vancouver is just a beautiful city. So the ocean there, the mountains, the trees, you're immersed in nature when you're in Vancouver. Even if you're in the city, you're just looking at it constantly. Winnipeg, I was younger, so no. And then, Toronto is very metropolitan. I mean, there's a lot of great parks. It's a beautiful city. I mean, one of the best, I think it's gotten city planning awards over the years. It's supposed to be one of the top cities in the world to live in. It's really a great, as an urban center, it's fantastic. But not a lot of hiking and stuff there.
After college, what took place?
University.
Oh, university. My goodness. Thank you.
Yeah.
I
never went to college. I went to university.
Never went to college.
I don't know. I never went. My goodness. Thank you. Sorry.
That would be a really good, that would be one of those like koans, where you'd go, how does someone get a degree but not go to college?
Oh my God.
And then you sit there on a mountaintop for 40 years and you contemplate it until a Canadian walks along and tells you.
It's a
university.
Canadians my dad's from Ohio, and they call it the Ohio State University. And you'd always be like, he's like, Jeff, no, I went to the. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, there's only one. There's only one.
Right. In the United States, I guess. So then, after university, where did you did you get into science? What were you doing?
No. I went into production, and then I went into acting. I got to a certain point where I was like, okay, I know I want to be an actor. I've known this since 4 years old. What am I doing? It's like now or never. And I kind of knew that as soon as I made that decision, I was going to face some difficult things. And I did. I was like, oh, I guess I got to transition. But it was a conscious decision. But I was always, all my jobs were pretty much, not all, but most of my jobs were working in production or, something to do with the entertainment industry when I got out of college.
Yeah. I was reading at this point in your life, before you transitioned, you were like nervous or not confident to be on screen. Do you think that your desire or will or passion to be an actor helped you in your transition process, or helped move that along so that happened?
Wow. What an interesting question. Wow. That's a really good question. I mean, the truth is, before I transitioned, I mean, there's some articles like when you read the media stuff, like you really, I mean, you got to go to the source of go to the interviews like that. This people listening. If you ever really want to know facts about something, go to the original article. Don't go to the articles that cannibalize the original article, because it's like broken telephone. They get more and more inaccurate as they go on. So, contrary to what's in the media, I did do quite a bit of acting on camera before I transitioned.
Got it.
So if you look hard, you'll see me in the pilot for Queer as Folk. I did a bunch of stuff. I was in a bunch of commercials, and I did stuff, and probably 2 or 3 years worth of credits, and I got in that time quite a few credits. And then I went to my agent and said, hey, I'm going to transition. And she's like, okay, when you're cooked, we'll move you over to the male roster, which was very progressive at the time, given that nobody knew anything about any of this. But to answer your question, I think that in a way it did. I think that for me, it was very important that I realized my dreams. It was very important to me that I pursue my dreams at all, like almost all costs. Like it's like non-negotiable. I have to realize my dreams in my life. I have to pursue them. Otherwise, life just isn't worth living to me. That's how it felt. And so part and parcel with that is being authentic. And when you're authentic, you walk through a door, you get the truth about something. You cannot go back out that door. Yeah. You just can't. It's like once you see something and know something, that's it. You see and know it. So I think that my desire to realize my dreams was a great motivation, but I wasn't consciously aware of what I had suppressed at that time. I cognitively knew that I was a guy. I cognitively knew it, but I hadn't emotionally integrated. I just thought, well, okay, so what? And there was no role model. There was no Chaz. There weren't even the only women role models were on Jerry Springer at the time. There was, and then there was Jorgensen way back, but there was nobody of any profile role models, men or women at that time, and definitely no men. I didn't even know that it was possible for a man to be born, quote unquote, the cliche, in the wrong body. So it was a big mystery. I'm sure that if this were today and I was going through it, I would know this as a young child. I would have been very aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, I think in some ways, it was, but it was more around me realizing my dreams. It was more about, okay, and then what that brought up was, I need to be authentic.
Yeah.
You can't just partially realize your dreams.
Yeah.
Right.
And thanks for talking about all this, Michael, because I think anyone can relate to everything you just said as far as being authentic and then knowing like the truth that's inside of you and then being able then to live in that in whatever shape or way or form that is, with whether it's passion, life, identity. I'm wondering, because, I'm glad you actually brought up the Queer as Folk that you were on there, because I had read that you were on there and I really couldn't find, because that show was such a thing. Like I remember like, it was another show in my life. Like growing up in Indiana, I was in college at the time. And I remember like we had like a free weekend for Showtime or something and it was on. And my parents were upstairs. My mom came down to get water and I was like quickly changing the channel, right? Like I was like, these are gay people. And because before, like really like maybe there was somebody on The Real World, like Pedro, who was in The Real World on MTV. But before that, as a kid on, there was this British comedy series called Are You Being Served on PBS. And they had Mr. Jeffries, who was like the ambiguously like gay shop clerk, right? And there was always these double entendre, like these inside jokes were made up. They never actually said what he was, but it was like the elephant in the room, right? And the thing is, he was the effeminate gay man, and I've learned to embrace like all my masculinity, femininity. But I was like, that's like it just didn't. And today, like being able to see all the different. I remember I had my mom came to visit down in Fort Lauderdale when I was living down there years ago. And after she and I were on good terms, and we went to the gay beach, and she got to meet bears for the first time. And she was like, and she was like, she's like, they're gay? I was like, yeah, they're gay. Like, but so just the whole thing though. So what I really wanted to ask with all this is, when you saw yourself on screen or on camera before you transitioned, did that click? Did something click about then changing the outsides as well too, or no?
No, I just thought it was normal to feel that uncomfortable.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't, again, there was no reference point for me. Like the way, and this is why, when I teach acting, I so press people to develop that sense of truth in themselves, to find what feels authentic, what feels true. Do you buy what you're doing right now? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, how do you expect us to buy it? It's when I had to discover that truth with no reference point. It had to come from the most pure, organic, visceral, primal body place of me knowing who I was. I had no words. It was like being in this amorphous galaxy of, and then just luckily hitting on that vibration of truth and going, oh, that's who I am. I'm a guy. Like, now we have that mirrored back for us.
Yeah. So,
in a way, there's a part of me that's envious of kids today that they can do this so young, but a part of the majority of me feels grateful for that process, because I know what it's like to organically hit on truth.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to find that within you when all forces around you want to press you away from that. So that was just so, like, to know that I have an internal barometer that is like unmovable, non-negotiable around the truth. And everybody has that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has that. We're just, in my case, it was just more extreme that I had to find it. But we all have it. We all have it. So that's what that's what I appreciate about, what I've been through, and because it really helps me, I think, be a better acting coach for that reason.
I think, that's a universal truth for a lot of people in different parts of their life. When you talk about trying to, become or live your sort of authentic self, I know, like for myself, coming out was kind of difficult, but it really wasn't a bigger transition. What was more difficult for me was I remember like when I came out, I like looked at myself in the mirror and I said, okay, I'm choosing to live my life as a, you know, an openly gay man, but now I'm not going to get married. Now I'm not going to have kids. I'm not going to have a good job. Like I all of a sudden put all of these restrictions on my life. And as my life began to, as I started growing up and living and, you know, evolving, it was like, wait a minute. Yes, I can yes, I can follow my dream. Yes, I can start my own business. Yes, I can do, you know, yes, I can get married. Thanks, Jeff. And continue to evolve. But it really, you have to believe in yourself first, and you have to sort of figure out and get that strength within, because otherwise you're just not going to, you know, grow and evolve and flourish, you know, to be the person who you're meant to be. So I think, you know, what you're saying is there's a lot of truth in it in a lot of different ways for a lot of people.
It's universal. You know, we're all connected. We're all humans, you know, no matter what we're going through. And I'm so glad that you were able to you know, find that, because some people just, you know, on some level just decide to believe their limiting beliefs, and you didn't. And now you're here, you know, with quadrillion billion followers on your podcast, right?
Fingers crossed it's that high. You know, sorry, Jeff, but really fast, you know, I think, you know, a big contributing factor to it though is also having role models continue to become more existent in the media, on television and movies. And, you know, being able to, it's so important to be able to see yourself on screen or just in the world, you know, having that visibility. And, you know, like you said earlier, there were no role models for you to, you know, sort of understand like what was going on with yourself. You know, for myself, I have a gay uncle. So it was a little bit different, you know, growing up. I knew that he was gay. So that was what it was. But I think, you know, the more you're able to see yourself in the world, it sort of changes it. And that's why, you know, we have this conversation here a lot. That's why it's really important to have representation in Hollywood, and all sorts of media outlets and in the workplace, in the world. It's just important to have that representation.
It's so important. It's really about permission and possibility. Yeah. You know, I can see myself reflected back, then I have permission to be myself. And then I can see what's possible for me. And that's why it's so essential for kids. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping trans youth. You know, it's like, I want them to have what I didn't have. Yeah. You know, it's just painful otherwise.
What is helpful for you to really get to that spot, that to get into that barometer that you talked about earlier? What gets you there? Do you have a practice for that? Yeah.
And it's changed over the years. You know, nature is a big part of it. Nature has a way of getting you to the truth, because I believe that nature has a vibration. And then when you're in it, you align with that vibration, and it aligns you with your own truth. It's just, that's the one of the functions of nature. It's an aligning vector, you know, an aligning force. So that's something I think I've always gone to. And I used to really heavily rely on my intuition and gut and like my body, you know, how my body reacted. And then, you know, and it's interesting how that's evolved, because now I think I still use that, but because, you know, how you peel layers off, you know, and at the core is the biggest pain. At the core is the central wound. At the core, that's the place that when you get closer to that, it becomes more difficult, you know? And so I feel like over the years, as I've peeled away stuff, now I'm getting closer to that core. Intuition can be, you know, your mind can play tricks on you. It's not, you know, it's sort of like, I don't know what to believe anymore, because it's a scarier place, you know. Before, when you're a little more distant from what's really scary, then it's like, okay, I can kind of be more grounded in a certain way. So now I really rely on certain practices, you know, meditation and yoga and the work of Byron Katie and Tara Brach and people like that, and my body as well, because my body, I know when I that non-negotiable feeling of the truth. That's what I'm always after. And so, you know, I know more when I'm lying, and it's those, like, you know, like, I just know, I know this isn't true. I know I'm living in bullshit, and I can't do anything about it right now, and I hate that. I don't know. I was like groping in the dark, and it's like, and that's, a lot of the times, that can be the case, but that's just the part of the process. So I think that I'm at a point now where I can just sit in the not knowing. Whereas before, I don't think I could do that. And sitting in the not knowing I'm beginning to realize is as much a part of the truth as when you're actually sitting in the truth.
That's a beautiful thing right there. And, with nature, I'm here in, I said earlier in LA, and there's like a little, in our condo building, there's like a little shared garden space. And a couple of years ago when we moved here, I missed being on the farm in Michigan that I used to be on. And I was like, I'm going to take this front bed on as a personal project, right? Instead of like, having a landscaper do it. And I was gone away with COVID, and it got overgrown, and it was like really choked out with leaves and all these beautiful plants. I was like, and so I had a couple hours earlier today, and I was just like, I just went out there and I just started like weeding it and dusting off, and some of the vines had grown over some of the original plants. I assumed were gone, but underneath all of those dead leaves, there was still this one little plant. And there's these plants in LA that I didn't grow up with in the Midwest. They're just kind of like these cool different things. They're kind of like very Amazonian to me, but
yeah.
I literally felt my clock or my energy or whatever, the cells in my body, like just reset to a different rhythm being out there. And, and I was kind of in resentment when I got back in town a couple weeks ago, being like, like I put so much hard work into this and this is whatever. And I was like, I'm so glad that I didn't like send a pop off with them, like a message to the HOA and being like, like I needed to be out there for like that hour. And the woman was like, it's so hot today. Why are you doing it today? I'm like, because I have time today. I'm just so grateful I have the time. And I really like, and I don't know where it comes from, like that just to knowing like, I don't know like where these gardening things come from in my head, to be honest. Like, and trained to be a gardener.
Can you come to my place, please?
Hey, listen,
he's for hire.
That's good. Yeah, but
a few plants.
Yeah. I'd invite you to come down with me. You can pull up a chair, and.
But I want you to do the work at my place. No.
I'm saying I'll pull down a chair downstairs at your place, and I'll meet you down there.
Oh, okay, absolutely. I'll sit and watch.
Yeah, right. You can do commentary. You can do voiceover.
I'll eat bonbons. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. So that's what people do when they're watching people garden, right? That's right, the thing.
Yeah, but it definitely it resets everything. There was a talk that you had with David Milch that's on your website that
got you guys to really research. Wow.
Honestly, like the things you talk about hit a chord with me, and so like you peel back the layers and just like find more information. And there was part of that conversation where you guys talk about art, but part of the conversation that really I wanted to just kind of point out is that you talk about how so much of accomplishment in art comes not from the discovery of one's gift, but the acceptance of the gifts that we have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then not all those gifts are welcome.
Can you
I
talk
think
about that a little more?
Well, I mean, that talk with David Milch was pretty. I was very humbled and proud to be able to speak with him because he's, obviously prolific and gifted and a leader in many ways in terms of his creative output. But he was just so willing to go there. He was so willing to talk about these things, and not a lot of people are. But, what we consider to be our liabilities, I think can actually be our gifts. And whatever we end up disowning owns us. Right? Not to sound too Oprah-esque, but that's how it works. Whatever we resist is in charge. And so when we can take the aspects of ourselves that we most hate, are most embarrassed by, have the most shame about, don't want anybody to know, that's the moneymaker.
Yeah.
That's where our life force lives. And it's people's greatest pain can be their greatest gift.
Yeah.
And you're not, it takes time to get there with things, that's why you see like moms who've been through some tragic event where they've lost a child to some disease or something, and then what happens is they didn't anticipate it, but their life becomes about being in service to other people who are suffering in the same way. And that's how they make meaning. Not everybody, but some people choose that route. And that's why I want to help trans youth, because of what I went through as a kid. And I don't want kids to suffer like that. It feels like it's almost like I have no choice. I have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like your greatest pain becomes your greatest gift, because then you're able to contribute from that place. That becomes your way of being in service to humanity. Yeah. So, the degree to which we resist those things that caused us pain, it will stop us from living our full selves, and that's the tragedy. We experience the tragedy, and then the tragedy eats us up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Instead of we experience the tragedy, and the tragedy then fuels us to move society forward, to move humanity forward.
And part of that fuel for you that's been beautiful that we've got to all benefit and witness from is the Trans Youth Acting Challenge that you started. Was it in 2020?
Yeah, we did it last year. Yeah.
Can you
we did it
about
last year,
that
but
a
we
little
did it earlier this year too. Like
Cool.
it bridged the 2 years. Yeah. Well, the Trans Youth Acting Challenge is an initiative that I put together and invited Nickelodeon to be a partner in, and they gratefully accepted and helped with this in a big way. So, and the idea was to offer kids who have a passion for acting an opportunity to get some mentorship, some skills, some insights, some training, and hopefully opportunities to audition for projects. And that's kind of what's happened. It's turned into a bigger success than what I thought it would be, actually. It was a bit of an experiment, and it's turned out to be amazing. A lot of the kids have been booking a lot of stuff. We discovered some incredible talent. Nickelodeon is very aware of some of those kids and bringing them in for auditions, bringing them in, meaning, self-tapes, because it's still COVID, but also now we can do that. So a lot of them are just doing great, and we had a webinar for everybody that submitted. We had a webinar with myself and the whole casting team at Nickelodeon and answered questions. And then there was 2 master classes. So we picked the top 15 submissions. I say the top, but I mean, there was a lot. We could say that there were more than 15 top ones, but we picked the 15 ones that we felt that could most benefit from the master class in terms of their skill and their gifts and where they were at. And I taught 2 acting master classes to those kids. And then, we've been mentoring some of those kids as we've been going on as well.
I love, what you've done with this program. I mean, I just think, ties into a lot of what we've already been talking about. But one of the things that people may not know is that one of the students that were in the program was on an episode of Danger Force. And I just want to talk about that episode because I watched it the other night and I was completely blown away at how simplistic the episode was, but how powerful the message came through at how simple everything was. And do you mind if we talk about that episode just a little bit?
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I take great offense at talking about that episode in my work.
I don't know. I just want to make sure it's okay with you.
Absolutely. Anything's open. Anything.
So there's 2 things that really stood out to me in that episode. So the first thing was when the student who was in the program, their character came out as a trans kid or a trans kid, trans person, trans
boy
came
out as a boy who transitioned.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the way that he explained himself, how he made this transition was that he said, I was born in the wrong body and I made the transition to be in the right body. And the other kids that were in that scene were all like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And it was that simple. It was just such a simple explanation. All of the kids got it. And then they moved on and they never talked about that again. And I just thought that decision to make that simple, where you could see the light bulb went on in all of the other kids' head, or the wheels clicked, or it made sense, which I thought was a smart way to do it. And also just for all of the kids watching the show to just understand it's that simple. It's not that complicated. It's just that simple of a choice. And then the other thing that I thought was really fantastic was at the end, spoiler alert, but at the end of the episode, the same student that was in your program, their character was the one who they were the one who saved the day. They stopped the fight from happening. They stopped the villain from hurting the woman that they were after. And I thought what was interesting about that was they had no special superpowers. It was just them being themselves, reacting in the moment, and they were the ones who were the hero. And I just thought that messaging was so powerful. It's, I felt like it jumped off the screen and it it spoke to me, and I'm guessing if it's speaking to me, it's speaking to the kids who are watching, the show.
Oh, thank you. I was so careful about how we worded everything. And when we were trying to figure out how to, I don't know if we didn't actually say, I don't think he ever says I'm wrong body. He says something like, yeah, I just realized I'm a boy, and, because that's who I am. The idea is that they're identical twins, and they couldn't figure out how they could be identical twins. And so they were like, how can you be identical twins? You're a boy and your sister's a girl. And they're like, well, okay, I transitioned because, so he says that. He never, if you notice, he never says I'm trans, because I wanted to, because I don't say that, right? I never say that.
Right.
And I wanted to give the space to other kids to use whatever language they want to use for themselves.
Yeah.
So he never uses that. And then another kid actually defines what transgender means. And so that's, I wanted to give those words to the other kids. Yeah. But he just basically says, I'm a boy.
Right.
So that was important to me. I wanted to be able to give that space to that character. And then I also wanted it to be that he saves the day, but he doesn't save the day because exactly he has special powers or anything, but he does have insight because of his trans experience that the other kids don't have. And that's how he saves the day. And that was really important to me too, that he's not just trans and that just happens to be, oh, let's do something politically correct and have a trans kid. It actually has something to do with the story. His experience through transition is what gave him the knowledge to actually save the day.
Yeah.
Michael, you wrote that, you co-wrote that episode, or?
I co-wrote it with Andrew Thomas, who's another one of our writers on Danger Force. Yeah.
Was that the first? You were on Henry Danger before for was that 4 or 5 years, and then Danger Force now. Was that the first episode that you'd written with them, or?
Yeah, that was the first episode I wrote. It was the second episode I directed, but it was the first episode.
Well done. Yeah. So, and we're gonna have links on the website for that, to your website as well, and all that good stuff, so that people can experience that. And it's interesting, it was somebody obviously from the program that you created, but that it was also twins, a brother and a sister.
It was, in Yiddish they say beshert, meant to be. It was beshert. It was just a gift from the gods. It was synchronicity. It was, So Sasha Cohen, not Sasha Baron Cohen, but Sasha Cohen, and his sister Natalie Cohen. So Natalie, so they were born identical twins, assigned female at birth. So Sasha, submitted a tape, and loved his tape, put him in the master class. It was great, and then. And I knew, I didn't tell anybody this, I didn't tell the kids or anybody in the Trans Youth Acting Challenge that we had this episode in the pipe, but I knew we did. And my intention was to cast it from the Trans Youth Acting Challenge. So then we started asking kids to audition. I find out that Sasha has an identical twin sister who happens to be able to act, and not just be able to act very, very well. So it was just like, to me, such an obvious choice. They were on the East Coast, and we just flew them in, and like, okay, you're doing this, and they were delighted, of course. So it was a really great experience to watch them grow through the process, but they were such professionals. They were so good. I was so proud of them. And I was so glad to be able to give them this it was their first TV credit, first major professional credit.
Wow. We talked about earlier about, specifically to his experience in the actual
Mm-hmm.
episode, that he was able, because of his lived experience, to provide, just to save a life, really. Not to give away too much, but I've seen time and time again when we fully accept our truths, like what the gifts or whatever, the thing that wants to come out of who we are, our being, that I think that's why it's so important that for all of us to be able to come together, because I feel like that whatever universe, source, put a little bit of the answer to the riddle of life in each one of us. And that when we all come together, just these moments that you said, my Yiddish is horrible, so I'm not going to attempt to I'm not even going to try. Sorry. But
just do it. I want to hear it make fun of you. Come on.
We'll give you the ball. Bashem? No.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
Bashert.
Yeah.
Bashert. That is those moments that I've witnessed time and time again when someone chooses to fully embrace who they are, and we all get and then we all benefit from that as a society.
For sure.
That has been such a beautiful experience with what you've created. And I think it's important just to mention that, in 2019, that you publicly came out in a Time magazine article. Was that really, as far as I'm sure your friends and family, actually I should never assume anything, but that moment then opened the door for all these, moment after moment after moment, these decisions you continue to make have led to where you are today. Is there a gratitude that you can talk about with where you're at today with that?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if I were to do that article today, people would be like, yeah, so. Right. I mean, It's amazing how far we've come in, 2 years?
Yeah.
At the time, it was like, okay, we'll do an article in Time Magazine. I mean, I don't know today if they would do that. Be like, okay, you and like whatever. Elliot Page's already done it. What do we care? Like, it's like, I hate to say it, but that's kind of the attitude in a way. It's like, it's just, it's being normalized to a certain extent, which is, I think, in some ways good. I mean, there's a lot of good things in that. But at the time, I mean, I'd been writing this solo show about my transition for years and years and years. And I finally did a public reading of it, a staged reading of it in 2018. And that's when I invited my coworkers from Henry Danger and Nickelodeon. They didn't know anything about my history. A couple of them did, but most didn't. And so they're like, wow. And it was a risk for me to do that. But I really was at that point was like, I know these people. I trust that they see me as I am. And, it's 2018. Hopefully they were amazing. They were incredibly supportive. And there's like, 20 or so of them who just came out and saw the show. So I did that in 2018, and I was going to put the show up and thinking, well, I'm just going to publicly disclose when I do my show. Cause it's just weird to just disclose for no reason. Like I was like, why would I do that? Like, it seemed like I needed, like there had to be a context for it. And it was never didn't seem like the right time ever. I was always willing to, it just didn't seem like the right time. But then what happened was, the whole Trump thing happened. And I was like, I can't keep my mouth shut anymore. I can't sit here and watch what's going on and just be quiet. It felt like I was trying to keep the lid on some sort of volcano underneath me. It was so uncomfortable. And I was like, I have to be able to speak freely about my experience. I have to be able to speak freely. And even when I'm teaching, and I'd be teaching like, at the time when we were doing in-person classes at SAG-AFTRA, and there'd be like, in the big room, and there'd be like, 120 people in there. And I'd be like wanting to use an example for my life, and I'd have to censor because nobody knew. Wasn't going to like disclose. It would have been so weird. It would have been like, suddenly the room would go quiet. It was still back when people reacted that way to this kind of stuff. So it was like, I have to do this. So, I worked with GLAAD, and they helped with it. And I, got set up with Time Magazine. And I don't see it as a coming out. I see it as a public disclosure. My coming out happened 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was never stealth. I was never, just keeping a secret. I, shared my information among anybody that knew me pretty decently well, I guess, and when in terms of my social life, or, and if it came, I auditioned for some roles for trans characters and stuff like that. It wasn't secretive, but I don't see it as a coming out. I see it as a public disclosure.
Yeah.
And because coming out has a whole other thing to it. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to share with the world my truth. Well, the world has known my truth for 20 years. I'm a man. That's the truth. That's my true identity. Now I've just disclosed my history. So it's different. It's just a different thing. People, it's easy to get that mixed up.
With your show that you referenced earlier, there's a clip on your website where you can watch some of the reading on that, and the material is so compelling and inspiring at the same time, and also just the humanity in it. The title is four cubits. Is that?
Yeah, the working title is 4 Cubits Make a Man.
4 Cubits.
It's from the Leonardo da Vinci Vesuvius Man. Vitruvian Man, not Vesuvius Man, Vitruvian Man.
But anyone who when the Da Vinci Code came out years ago, and that was really hyped up, that cover of Da Vinci there. So COVID happened, and is that something that maybe with theater starting to open back up? That
at some point, yeah. I mean, it was slated. We were going to do it at the Skylight Theater. We had a full production. I had a producer. I had a director. We were actually starting rehearsals. We were supposed to open May 20th. I can't remember last year. And then COVID hit, and it was like, wah, wah.
Wow.
But I totally believe, I totally believe in a beshert. I do believe that things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and that this will happen at a different time, a different place. But in the meantime, I got to do other things. I got to do the Trans Youth Acting Challenge, and I got to like doing this podcast. You know, this would never be happening if I hadn't, you know, so I guess, so there's other things that I get to do, but I do plan on doing that play at some point. Yeah.
Well, I just want to personally just give you, I know when the time's right, it'll happen, but just give you encouragement when the time is right to definitely do it. Cause it is just the little bit that we got to peek in the window of was just very amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well deserved. You know, this has been such a really great conversation, Michael. You talked about, you know, like service earlier. I'd like to just, you know, your philosophy about teaching and what you've been able to give back to other people. Besides, you know, you've also done stuff with, before the trans youth non-binary acting group that you've been involved with. You've been doing other stuff with SAG for years as well too. Mm-hmm. And what I found about with diving into some of your philosophy is that there was such a spirituality to it that there's this word creative that we use, or acting, or, you know, like or maybe I'm a creative. And when I started really kind of accepting like myself like 10 years ago, and understanding that when I get out of bed, that I'm creating something, all of us, like the vibration you talked about, like I'm putting a vibration out into the world that then, whether I'm, you know, like saying hi to people and being friendly, and then how that comes back to me. So when I was reading this, you're talking about how, for actors and how they create and the truth and understanding like, oh, if I'm thinking about like money that's due or this or that, when I'm trying to play this role with the director, and I'm not actually then tapping into the actual art of it, the craft of it itself, then you wonder why it doesn't deliver. And I can think about that like in my daily life, like, you know, where depending upon my spiritual condition, like what I'm tapped into, if it's surface or there's depth to it. What has it been like? What is the joy? I know that when you step on stage that you feel something, but also what's this feeling when you get to now teach other people?
I love teaching. I don't know that I could just act or just teach. I have to do both. My master's is in adult education, which is, you know, of course, what most actors do too, as well. Just like their cell biology degree, it's very normal. Noted. Yeah, if you want to be an actor, this is what you got to do. Yeah. I've always been interested in the process of learning on a transformative level. Transformative learning, like not just like pedagogical learning, not rote learning, but learning that changes your cells, learning that when you step into something and you step out, you have transformed, you're a different person. And that's super, super interesting to me. I'm just really fascinated by, you know, illusion versus reality. You know, like we are in these bodies, we are covered in skin, we have bones that keep us together, and how much meaning people put on that presentation and how that defines who you are. And how it can be like, I'm actually, believe it or not, 6'3". Okay. So people keep mistaking me for 5 feet tall. And, you know, it's like, you know, who you are on the inside is just not the physicality, but you use, this is a tool. This is an instrument, this physicality that we're given. It's a box that we inhabit that is a tool for expression. And that's why, I'm sorry, I know I'm going a little off course here, but when the physicality that you inhabit doesn't reflect your truth in a way that is so substantial and essential, like gender, right? It becomes such a burden for expression. It's so hard to, you know, I'm a man. I don't, you know, I'm not being perceived as a man. It is, I can't even begin to communicate the amount of frustration that created for me about being able to express myself authentically, right? So given that, you know, I know that we can present ourselves physically in a way that is radically different from who we are. That's what that taught me. That whole experience taught me. So, and we all have that to some degree, things that we don't like about our bodies, or, you know, or things that change. And as you age, that's a whole other transition, right? So what was the question?
Well, you said that, you know what, you could neither just act nor just teach. You need both.
Oh, right. Okay. So it was about teaching. Thank you. So I'm really interested in getting people to get into that flexibility inside of who they are and what they can express, because it transcends their physicality. And the irony and paradox of it is that casting starts with the physicality quite often. Ask any casting director. It's like, are they right for the part in terms of just the headshot? Like, can this body tell this story?
Yeah.
That's like 75% of it. Can that body, like, I am not going to they're not going to call me in for playing Magic Johnson in a biopic. They just aren't. Right? If they only realized how versatile I was. But no, but they're not. Yeah, I mean, come on. But they're not. It's not appropriate. It's just not appropriate for so many reasons. But are there aspects of Magic Johnson that I feel like I could resonate with, that I could connect with, that I could? Absolutely. So we can't let our physicality limit, right, our performance and where we can go with a character. And when students talk to me about branding, I want to slap them, because I feel like saying branding's none of your business. Your brand is to be your authentic self, to be as authentically you as you possibly can be. And within that, become friends with all of your disowned aspects of yourself so that your range is infinitely wide.
Wow.
That's your freaking brand.
Everyone needs to hear this. Yeah.
And stop trying to get in everybody else's business about my brand. Well, I play middle-aged mothers. I'm like, no, you don't.
No.
It's so limiting. And so that's part of my philosophy, is to help people reclaim the parts of themselves that they don't want to depict in characters, and to embrace those aspects, and to find the physicality within, and to really just expand into all of who they are. And what's so exciting about that is that it is infinite and limitless. There is no end to that discovery. There's no end to it.
It's like getting on that. So, I mean, to me, when I've had that experience, it's like, you just get on that surfboard and the waves just keep coming. And there's like, oh, that was a good wave, but there's another one coming.
Yeah.
It just, the limitness of it. It's such a wonderful feeling.
To surf yourself, to be able to surf your own waves, to ride those waves that come from inside. It takes practice. It takes practice.
It does.
It takes study.
But that feeling when you get it, I've almost said to somebody before, it's like, I almost feel like I'm a Christmas tree and every branch has been lit up. When I get to connect into that, when I get to be that limitness, it's just like,
Yeah, it's like, when you're living your truth, when you're where you're supposed to be and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like everything, it just keeps coming and it keeps going, and you're not worried about what's coming next, or where the next paycheck is coming from, or where the next job is coming from, or you're floating, you're vibing.
When
you're just vibing.
When you're connected to that.
Yeah.
And I think that, we can't have the expectation that we should feel like that 24/7.
Yeah, we can't.
It's a process. It's an ebb and flow. It's like the stock market kind of goes up and it does these jaggedy, but it's always on the way up. It's just has dips and then it goes up again. That's what our relationship with ourselves are like. Is like. It's just, that's the process.
Yeah. But by you being the work that you've done in the relationship with yourself has then in turn given you the gift of being able to then help other people in the relationship with work you're doing today is what I'm hearing. I'm not sure if it feels that way to you, but.
I think so. It certainly helps me to be able to contextualize it when I teach. I'm learning as I'm teaching. Like, I've become a way better actor since I started teaching, because I have to articulate. I've come to understand and accept myself more, because I get to have the gift of other people showing up, my students showing up and working through their blocks in acting or moving forward in their acting, and they're teaching me as they do that. I really see teaching as a sacred role. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's to have someone entrust their creativity, vulnerability is a very serious and sacred thing. And I don't mean to get overly precious in the sense. I'm being very sincere. I have been in classes where I've been in, everybody who's been an actor for any period of time is going to encounter abusive teachers. That used to be the way that they thought acting needed to be, to break you down in order to build you up. I don't believe that. I don't think you get the best out of people. And that certainly, I don't like being treated that way in acting classes. I don't think there's a place for abuse anywhere.
I don't think it feels good for the instructor either, honestly,
No. And they're not coming from, I think that when an instructor does that, I honestly don't think that they're feeling okay about themselves. I think it's coming from it comes from a place of ego. If a teacher stands there and they think they know more about me than I do, it just run out of the room. If you encounter a teacher like that, you want to, there's a difference between having confidence and insight and sharing respectfully than, trying to break you down and own you and mold you and shape you. And so I think that's important. And that's the way of the future for acting teaching, I believe, is to be a guide, a respectful, empathic guide, as opposed to a tyrant,
Yeah. I want to ask a question I didn't ask earlier, and that is the experience you had with the parents as well, with what you've done with the trans and non-binary youth acting teaching that you're doing. That is also a very special experience for trust with that parent as well too, with allowing that relationship with the child. And I'm just curious, what was that like going into this?
I love talking to the parents of kids who are dealing with any kind of gender identity issues. I love speaking with them because, sometimes they're still struggling, but essentially, what they're doing is they just I love my child. I want to do what's best for them. And to allow their child to be their authentic self and to hold their child as able, the thing that parents, and you probably heard this from, your parents are like, oh, well, it's, we love you. We don't, it's great that you're gay. We just want you to have a good life. And we're scared about what that identity in the world will do to you, or do, how people will treat you. That's the common refrain from parents, it's like, how hard a life my child's going to have. And it's just interesting to see how parents deal with that and, having empathy for that concern. And at the same time, to see them rise above it, because ultimately what they know is that this is their child's path, and get out of the way and just support, and that it's really when they're concerned about their child's safety and all those things, it's legitimate. And sometimes it can be about them, really. It can be about the parents' safety, and I don't, and more like, and I don't mean that in a narcissistic, like accusing them of anything at all. Parents they're being incredibly, all the parents I met have been incredibly amazing with their kids. I mean that more like, that's how we function. That's normal as a human being. That, like I have a dog. He's like the light of my life. And I get so worried for his safety. And really what I'm worried about is the pain I will feel if I lose him. It's about my fear of loss. That's what it's really about. Of course I care for him. Of course I will, and I can get into those moments where I'm empowered and I'm like, I see us as separate yet connected, and I'm going to, but when I'm getting fearful, when I'm getting in that space of like, oh my God, what about this? What about that? I'm just worried about my own loss and grief. I don't want to feel that. I didn't want him to live forever and outlive me, whatever, all those Nagwood. But it's like, it's just, it's that. And so it's hard for parents to balance that and go, okay, where am I being truly supportive, and where am I just worried about the loss that I might have with this? So it's so beautiful to watch them wrestle with those kinds of things. And it's just, I have so much respect for the parents for just creating, for many of these kids. This is unfortunately not everybody, but for many of these kids, creating the support, having the medical resources, therapy resources, whatever they need, fighting at the schools, all that. It's not easy.
Thank you for speaking of that, because you have a unique experience of that I really appreciate you talking about that. You have a quote on your Instagram, at least currently right now you do: climber of mountains, real and imagined.
Yeah.
that hit real.
Yeah. Some mountains we create.
Yeah. Have you been able to do any good hikes with COVID? Have you been able to take advantage of any of that? Any time off?
Yeah. Luckily, I'm an avid rock climber, so I've been doing some of that. For a long time, couldn't, because you do need to have a partner, and that partner you're not socially distanced the whole time. But yeah, I was able to do some and really enjoyed that. And I've been doing a lot of hiking, a lot of stuff out in nature, some backpacking, just up in the mountains as much as I can be. Yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. Like I said, it's my temple.
I love it.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah. Anthony's wishing he was in California right now to get back up in the mountains. So.
I do.
Well, you've got pizza, so
Pizza and hot dogs. That's what we got here.
You got pizza and hot dogs. What do you need mountains for? Come on.
Yeah.
Next month.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been just so great to be with you, and we're excited to see what more continues to unfold in your life. Thanks for sharing a little bit of that today with us.
Thanks so much. It was great talking with you both.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed Michael's story and were inspired to develop a sense of truth in yourself and live a life defined by what feels authentic. For links to everything discussed today, check out Michael's profile page on our website at www.talkoutloudlive.com.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Talk Out Loud. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, rate us, and share with a friend. You can also follow us on social media at Talk Out Loud Live. To catch up on past episodes and learn more about our past guests, visit our website at www.talkoutloudlive.com. You can also get your official Talk Out Loud gear in our online store and browse our online bookstore curated with our guests' recommended books. Thanks again for listening, and remember, be true, be you, and to talk out loud.